Okay, we hope everybody had a good break. Now is our section for TV and film focus. We're going to talk about the very interesting career of David Bennett Carren, who's here with us to speak next. And then we're going to see one of the best UFO movies, in my opinion, ever made, which was based on Kevin Randall's book, the movie called Roswell. So we're going to start off with David. And here to introduce David is Steve.
Okay, our next speaker sat on the right hand of Star Trek creator Gene Roddenberry. During the time he worked as a scriptwriter for Star Trek, The Next Generation. David Bennett Carren went on to write scripts for many famous science fiction and suspense television shows, including The Twilight Zone, Stargate SG-1, Buck Rogers in the 25th Century, Tek War, Beyond Reality, and more. His first novel, No Power on Earth, published in 1986, deals with the after effects of an alien invasion of Earth. Over the years, David has directed, written, and produced more than 200 films and television shows, and has won numerous awards. He is currently an associate professor at UT Pan American, where he teaches screenwriting, film directing, film history, and video editing. He lives right here in Edinburg with his wife and 2 children. And so let us welcome David Bennett Carren.
Hello everybody. Who here is interested in writing for TV and movies? Sci-fi or otherwise. Who's interested? Look, it's not like I'm asking you, do you want to make a living jumping off of burning buildings? Come on, don't be afraid. Not that many of you, really? Okay, maybe write, produce, direct, act. What are you here for? All right, okay, how many people are interested in how they get written? Okay, that's good. All right. Okay, actually, it's not that different from what we're doing right here, right now, in the sense that television is written in the room. Now, I'm not talking about that really bad movie that came out a few years ago, where I thought it was a drama, it's really a comedy. You may have heard of that. What you do in television is you get in a room with these big whiteboards, not unlike that stuff on the walls there, and you start on the first board and you write teaser. Let's say if the show has a teaser, and you write Act 1. There's like 5 acts in an hour TV show now, because they've added, when I started in TV, my first job was Starsky and Hutch, okay? And back then we had 4 acts and a teaser and a tag. Now they have 5 or 6 acts, a teaser and a tag, because they're putting in all these commercials now. All right, and back then the shows were like 50 minutes long. Remember the old Star Treks were like 52 minutes of screen time? Now they're down to 43 and 42 minutes. We have 18 minutes of commercials. I love DirecTV. Get rid of all that stuff, okay? But the way they structure, you put teaser, what happens in the teaser? Then you put Act 1, Scene 1. You know, maybe you put A, B, C, D. And each act has 3, 4, or 5 beats. Beats being a scene. Because what you're watching is comprised of scenes and beats. Emotional beats, action beats, character beats. You're not aware of it, but you love it. Because all of it is being communicated through emotion. Emotion and drama is how you communicate. It's an emotional communication. If it's not, you're watching a documentary about accountants. Then there's no emotion, okay? And it's manipulative. It has to be. There has to be conflict. I've been in the Valley here 7 years. I love it down here, by the way. I hope I die here. I love this place, honestly. And I've had the best students I've ever had in the world, but my students have a lot of trouble writing scripts for me, a lot of them, because they don't understand conflict. Because they're pleasant, and they have nice families and all that. And they don't want to write conflict, because conflict is not indulged in here, like in places like Los Angeles and New York, or even Dallas, right? But conflict is a story. Emotion is a story. Television is mostly a situational conflict. Star Trek had great situational conflicts. The Enterprise runs into a solar storm that's been manufactured by a sentient being, and the containment vessels, or containment shields, or containment shields are collapsing, and the warp drive is going to, you know, explode. And then on top of that, the captain is having an issue because he's lost his confidence in himself because he got that disease on Atari 4, which affects his ability to make decisions. We've seen all this, right? It's mainly situational, and then the emotional stuff is underneath that. What's really nice in television, though, is when you get the emotion is really more, the most authentic emotion that comes out of a writer's heart. Breaking Bad, how many of you watch Breaking Bad? Okay? How many of you watch Walking Dead? Okay? The emotion in Walking Dead is very sincere because all the characters in that story, none of them are professional heroes. Even the villains aren't professional villains, although I don't know about these new people that just ran into in the old railway yard. But it's ordinary people in extraordinary situations. I'll give you one last little bit of lecture that I give my students in my classes. I teach from Aristotle. Okay, no one's really gotten past Aristotle. I know your eyes are already glazing over because he's been dead for 2,500 years. But he was the one that codified the concepts of a good story, which is there's an antagonist and a protagonist. The protagonist is the hero. He's the character we identify with. He can be a terrible man. Walter White was a horrible human being, but we identified with him. He was the protagonist. The antagonist was Hank. He was a good guy, but he was the antagonist. There's a protagonist, and then the antagonist is trying to stop him from doing something very important. And that's where your conflict comes. And then you get into some interesting stuff like putting on a starship, or you have it in a zombie world, or like True Blood, half the characters are vampires, the other half are werewolves, and the people who are left who are human are very confused and upset by what they have to deal with. Science fiction gives you lots and lots of opportunity to explore very fresh and interesting situations. I've been writing for a very long time, and I will have to admit, Aristotle laid it out. There are 4 ways to write a story. Ordinary people, ordinary reality. Extraordinary people, ordinary reality. Extraordinary reality, ordinary people. Or extraordinary reality and extraordinary people. Guess what the hardest is to write? The very, very hardest is to write. Who said it? Ordinary people and ordinary reality. Because how do you make that exciting? You know, let's say Walking Dead was set in in a Georgia town and there are no zombies. Why would we watch? The beginning of that show, when he's a cop and he gets shot, that's as far as it would go. He'd recover and then get back to work. About the zombies, where would you go with that? Oh, his wife's having an affair with Shane? I'm sorry, my eyes are glazing over faster than yours would. Okay, I have a lot of trouble writing ordinary people, ordinary reality. I really like the extraordinary and exciting, the science fiction and fantasy, and thrillers. I write thrillers. All this material it gives you. I have to make one, before we get into this presentation, I have to make one little advertisement here. How many of you guys have gone to or are going to or are having kids going to UTPA, where I'm a professor? Okay? UTPA has the only unified theater film program in the country. Theater and film people work together. We're not in separate units like Bosnia and Serbia. We all get together. Okay? We are the only university in the country that makes a feature film of our students every other year. A feature film. The last 2 films we did both won awards. One of them got distributed. The one we're working on right now is the first one to have a student director and a student screenplay. It's always been the faculty before now. I said, I'm going to find a student director and I'm going to find a student script. I've been watching the footage. We shot our first week this last week. And it's the best footage I've ever seen in one of our films. I think we're going to send it to Sundance. We're going to send it to Sundance. We're going to send it to the Austin Film Festival. We're going to get notice of this. Because it's coming from the hearts of the writer and the director. And guess what the story is? Is it ordinary people, ordinary reality? Would it be that? It's La Llorona, only she's not the bad guy. She's looking for her kids. She didn't drown them. She died before her time, and she's just trying to find her children. And she has to cross the border from Mexico and the United States to find them. This works on so many levels I can't tell you. and she meets a coyote, and it's a coyote. And it guides her across the border. It's a coyote. It's a monster. I love it. I love this kind of material. I just get excited even talking about it. I can't wait to show you this movie. It's called La Grande Distancia. How can you not love something like this? Now, if you do want to write ordinary people, ordinary reality, my hat's off to you. I've only been writing since I was 18 years old. Who was president in 1970? Who was president in 1970? Nixon, yeah, it was Nixon, right? So I've been writing since Nixon was our president. And I have trouble writing ordinary people, ordinary reality. I have trouble. I have 50 years, a lot of years experience. I have trouble doing it. Anyone can just really sit down and just have ordinary people find drama in their lives, I gotta hand it to you. Well, why are we all here? We love science fiction. Because it's not ordinary. Isn't it? It's never ordinary. It's always extraordinary. It's always exciting. All right. Let me show you some stuff. We'll get past this real quick. Oh, this is from Space Precinct. Anyone ever watch Space Precinct? You did? Were you in prison? Were they torturing you? No? How did you see Space Precinct? And he was a real friend? No, it's a Space Precinct. I'm going to show you a clip. It was done by Jerry Anderson, who was the famous, he's the Gene Roddenberry of England, is Jerry Anderson. And he did all those puppet shows like Thunderbirds and such. Before this show, he was famous for doing the worst hour of TV he ever produced, called Space 1999. He liked doing live-action television because he wanted to do live-action television instead of puppets because he didn't like the way the puppets picked up phones and walked. That was his creative drive, to do live-action. Plus the fact there was more money. And this thing was a great idea, Hill Street Blues in space. What a great idea. But very shortly after that, he realized he couldn't handle that because Hill Street Blues in space means multiple characters, very carefully developed and very carefully written. And Jerry didn't do anything like that. So we ended up doing Kojak in space. And Kojak was already out of date by the time we were doing this show. And it was way too dark, and it was a silly concept. And anyway, it was an interesting experience going to England. We worked on it in Pinewood Studios, this famous studio, where no two buildings look alike and they're all crumbling because the Brits don't care about stuff like that since the Empire collapsed, you know. And I knew we were in trouble when we went into this unheated shed and these people were making these strange things out of mannequins and vacuum hoses. I said, what are these? And they said, they're robots. They weren't robots. Okay. So this was an episode we did called Seek and Destroy. And again, it is interesting how your real life can impact your work. We were in London having a dinner with Jerry in a very nice restaurant. I told him a true story about how I was walking my lab and this pit bull attacked us and bit me, but left my lab alone. And I had to go get a tetanus shot and the monster was destroyed. I really know what it's like to be attacked by a killer dog, a man-eating dog. It was very scary. He said, that's an episode of Space Precinct. I said, how? He said, well, you know, this alien species, they're going to invade this planet. Our planet was called Demeter or whatever. And they're going to invade our planet, this planet, and they're going to plant dogs all over the planet. And then they'll set off the signal and all the dogs will attack their owners, all the leaders of the planet. The planet will go into chaos and then they invade. We'll do that. Okay, I've seen They Only Kill Their Masters. Oh, that could be scary, okay. And then he said, we'll make the dogs labs. He didn't get the point of my story. It was a pit bull. How many of you ever had a lab? How ferocious is a lab? I mean, that your dachshund, this is truth, look it up. Dachshunds are more likely to bite you than a lab. Dachshunds are more dangerous than labs, okay? So he said, okay, let's see if we can get to the clip. Yeah. You like the piece of model there? Okay. You notice in the background that cityscape was going by, right? Yet Max Sennett invented it in the silent days. That was a plastic drum with a picture on it, and it was going like this. Okay. And of course, models on strings. And didn't you love the Jim Carrey claw dog? You know, You know, first time I saw this, I laughed so hard I fell to the floor with my stomach like this. When do you think it was shot? '38? Yeah, could be colorized, and they could have added sound. Yeah. '78? Oh, okay. That's more reasonable. That's a sensible guess. Any other guesses? 86? Okay, we'll move on. Because I'm going to tell you later. I want to get to Star Trek. Because this is the good stuff. I'm very proud of this. The Writers Guild sent me a certificate saying it's one of the 100 best. I worked on one of the 101 best written TV series in history. It is one of the 101 best written TV series. I think it ranked like 65. Which is, when you think there's Breaking Bad and a whole bunch of other shows, there's Twilight Zone, that's pretty good, okay? And this is next gen. The original Star Trek is like number 35, okay? So I'm very proud of it. You did a great job. And let's look at a clip. Okay. Now, first, a little setup before this. How many of you have seen Future Imperfect? Okay. Basically, and I'll tell you, there is no such thing as an original idea. There are such things as original adaptations. Once Woody Allen was asked where he got the idea for making What's Up Tiger Lily the way he did. And someone asked him if it was an homage to, you know, silent movies or something. And he said, no, it wasn't an homage, we stole it. And everybody steals liberally, but also as an homage, if you want to look at it that way. And the way you reinvent an idea is where your talent comes in. Okay? You can sometimes do really amazing things like Walking Dead, which of course the zombie apocalypse thing is an old idea dating back to who? Who does it date back to? Now come on. I Am Legend? That's where he stole it. He stole... he's very open about it. Ramirez is very open about it in the interviews. And a documentary I just saw, that I Am Legend by Richard Matheson is what inspired him. Not the book, of course, not the Vincent Price movie, is what inspired him to come up with the zombies. And this was inspired by an old movie called 36 Hours, where James Garner is an OSS agent. He's captured by the Germans. They put him in an artificial hospital. They tell him, oh, it's 1946, the war's been over for 2 years, the Americans won. Everyone in the hospital is a German agent, dressed in American uniforms. And they tell him, oh, by the way, how did you plan D-Day? And they're trying to get D-Day out of him. So we have Riker going to an away team mission. And he gets gassed in the Cape, and he wakes up, and 16 years have passed by. And he's, suddenly he's captain of the Enterprise, and he's got a son. And everyone knows he never had a kid in the whole history of the show. And he never got married, and he's got a dead wife, and his whole, what happened? And he has amnesia, supposedly, just like they did with James Garner. Well, he's trying to get close to his son, okay? Let me show you this. The scene had a lot of unnecessary, in fact, you can see it right now up there. You'll notice, this is a page from the scene of the script. And you look at it and it says, Riker reacts to that, then turns from Beverly and approaches Jean-Luc. Merce moves off. If you go to the next, slide here, you know, it's okay, Dad takes a deep breath. Yeah, beat, smiles. But he was ignoring that stuff. He was ignoring the beats. He was ignoring the extra stuff. The actors were giving it to him in another way. We didn't really have to put that stuff in there. I don't put that stuff in there anymore. It's called parentheticals and expositional emotion. I don't put that stuff in because the director either ignores it or reinvents it, or he does what the director's supposed to do that stuff. So our script was like a collapsing stock market. Every day we were 2 minutes short because he was directing so efficiently we were losing script time. In the course of shooting the episode in 8 days, by the 7th day, we had already added like 7 pages of material to this thing. It went from 54 pages to 64 pages by the end of the shoot. And the scenes had to push the story forward. They had to use characters we'd already cast or already had hired. We couldn't have any new props or new stunts or special effects or anything like that. They had to be dialogue scenes, but they had to be good dialogue scenes. Finally, we're on the 7th day, and we're almost out of time, and we're still 2 minutes short. I mean, it was like an option trading thing. We were losing money trading on the stock market or something. So we all trooped over, my partner and I at that time, we trooped over to the exec producer's office, and we wrote that scene at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, sent it to Mimeo, sent it to the script guys. They got it like the actors got it like the next morning at 6 in the morning or something like that. And they shot it the next afternoon. And you notice it's a turbo lift, and there's no special effects, and the costumes we already had. The way the scene came about was, I didn't have any kids at the time. The executive producer had kids. He said, God, if I missed the last 16 years, I wouldn't have seen him have his first tooth. I wouldn't have seen my kid walk for the first time. We put that in the scene. My partner had a thing about Curtis Creek. Actually, the only passion he had in life was fishing, which is to me always a strange passion, because the whole point of fishing is there is no passion. You'd sit and just kind of zone out, and he loved it. And there's this mythical place fishermen like to go. Are there any fishermen here? I don't mean to be insulting. Any fishermen? Have you heard of Curtis Creek? Supposedly there's this, it's a legend of the perfect place to fish that he knew about. It's like Shangri-La. Fishermen just talk about Curtis Creek. There is no such place, but if I ever died, I hope to go to heaven, there's Curtis Creek. So that's in there, Curtis Creek. Okay. Later on I wrote a movie where the Curtis Creek Monster, I guess I was getting even with my partner. Anyway. And my contribution was, my father had just died like the year before we wrote this. He died like in '89, we wrote this in 1990. And one of the last things I said to him was, Dad, you never let me down. So that's in there. So this is from the heart, that scene. It was from all our hearts in one way or another. And the scene, I can't imagine the show without the scene now. Originally, it cut from the hospital, the sick bay, excuse me, to them going to their quarters, and they're talking about Curtis Creek. That's all there was. How would it have mattered? He just puts his hand on his arm and says, it's okay. And then they're talking about Curtis Creek. Wouldn't matter. It was one of those lucky accidents. Okay, very important question for you guys. When was this shot and for how much money? I just mentioned it really. Any Star Trek fans here know, they probably know the history of every episode. I threw in a line here about the Fornax disaster, and the people were making up all sorts of backstories to the Fornax disaster. It's just some words I threw in, because I knew it was a galaxy called Fornax. 1990. We shot this in 1990 for $1.8 million. Okay, that was a very good budget at that time. It still is. Okay, how much do you think the Space Station was shot for and when? Someone said 1986, 1976, 1978? Right. What would you say that thing was shot for? It was shot 4 years after this for $1.4 million. In England, where a dollar goes further. So it was a comparable budget. They shot for about the same amount of money, and they shot those things in 9 days. This was an 8-day show. They were shooting their shows in 9 days. Why is it so terrible when they spend about the same amount of money and time? Because you have morons and idiots doing it, or you have intelligent people. There's a true story I always tell my students, that there was a movie a friend of mine was working on called The Sword and the Sorcerer. It's Lee Horsley's only movie. You don't know who he is, don't worry. And this character is jumping off this cliff, and he was working with the guy, and when he jumped off the cliff, he was dressed as a monster. And they were shooting in Griffith Park, and it was 60 feet up, it was 6 stories up, and he jumps off this cliff. And just as he jumped off the cliff, the stuntman did, ah! Made a little sound like that, ah! And there's an overhang. And if you see the movie, it's a great shot of him falling, and you know, they're all actors, those guys, SAG actors, you know. And he's windmilling like this, and it looks great. But he knew he had jumped off the cliff on the wrong foot. He went left instead of right. and he knew he was going to miss the airbag, which is why he made the sound. So the shot's in the movie, and it's, oh, it looks great, but he missed the airbag. They cut at that point because the airbag was in the shot, you know, and he was killed instantly. And I feel that so much of life is defined by that stuntman story. You jump off on the wrong foot. You know, you marry the wrong person, you take the wrong job, you decide to have an animatronic lab, you know, you decide to have your spaceships on strings when we'd had Back to Dykstra and Star Wars, we had motion control. Actually, they had motion control in the original Star Trek in the 60s. Those beautiful shots of the Enterprise are motion control shots, you know, where the camera's moving. The ship isn't moving, the camera is, right? He didn't want to do motion control, so he had tabletop models with the little strings. I mean, this is like something kids do. Really, you have to think about what you're doing. The people on Trek, the writers, all of us, really thought about what we were doing, and we didn't just put our minds into it, we put our hearts into it. I was thinking about my dad when we were writing this thing. The exec producer was thinking, what if you talk about this, you know? And my partner, my crazy partner with Curtis Creek, you know, it's really, really important to be informed. It wasn't that we just stole some old James Garner movie. We took some ideas that we were inspired by, we reinvented it, and we put our heart and soul into it. By the way, I think this would go for if you had a donut shop. I've been to 2 new donut shops this week. One of them's okay, and the other is, you can tell there's passion in the donut shop. There's a passion in those donuts. And the other donuts, it's a job. They're both good donuts, but I like the passionate donuts better. You know? And it comes for anything you do in life. There's one, oh good, I have some time. I wanted to share one more tidbit about this show with you and how you get informed by life. Something you need to know. Are you interested in what Michael Dorn and Brent Spiner were like? Okay? Worf and Data. They were very nice people, but there's something you need to understand about actors. If you put an actor in heavy makeup and contact lenses and fangs for long periods of time where they play a monster, an alien, or whatever, or a robot, they go insane. It's very uncomfortable. People react to them very differently than they ordinarily would. Data would go to the commissary and people would crowd around staring at him. Worf never could leave the stage without being mobbed. You know, and it was, then he'd take off the makeup and he'd go to the commissary. He and I would go to the commissary together and no one knew who he was. And he had odd feelings about that. They worshipped him in the makeup and they didn't care who he was without it. You know, it's very difficult. So I thought about it, and Spiner especially hated visitors to the set. He would, in character, he'd be shooting a scene, suddenly break out of character, wave at the camera and say, excuse me just a minute. He'd walk behind the camera, go over to where some visitors were and shake hands with them, go back and continue the scene and get back in character again, just to make a point about how much he hated visitors. Okay? So I'm thinking, I had an idea, again how it's informed by real experience. What if you had an actor like this, and he's shooting a movie? This is the story I came up with. He's shooting a movie in the hill country. Medium budget science fiction horror thing. And he's playing an alien invader. He's wearing full body, head appliances, claw gloves, claw feet, spacesuit rig on the whole thing. And his name is Troy Athens. I named him Troy Athens because he's at war with himself. Oh, okay. And he's a monster. I mean, he's a monster to the crew. And he's particularly cruel to the director, who happens to be his wife. And in front of the whole crew, he tells the wife he's going to leave her at the end of the shoot. As soon as the film is finished, they're finished. And she's in tears. The makeup guy is furious with him. So he puts crazy glue on his appliances, his fangs, his claw gloves, and his claw feet, and he glues them into his outfit. And he's incoherent. My damn teeth are stuck. You can't understand him. So he's in a rage. He gets in his car. He drives off back to Austin, wrecks his car out in the middle of nowhere, and he's wandering around in the woods, mumbling incoherently. An alien abductee's worst nightmare, right? Wanders into this junkyard where there's 3 neglected, abused foster kids live in with a drunk who's always drunk and always asleep. They knock him out, they chain him up, they captured an alien. And when he tells them, he says, I'm an actor from Hollywood, they think his planet's Hollywood. Hollywood? Yes, Hollywood! And it's called My Monster. The movie's called My Monster. And the reason I'm telling you about this is I wrote this kind of to deal with certain feelings about Star Trek, because honestly, it's very difficult to go into the future with 400 years and do a good job. The show was a writer beater. It ground up people because it's so difficult to write these things. This is a very hard show to write. And I wanted to get some feelings out. I want to explore some feelings. I wanted to do a story that was E.T. meets Boo Radley. It was perfect. Who doesn't love E.T. and Boo Radley, right? You know, To Kill a Mockingbird? And I wrote this thing just as kind of a, just to get off my chest about the film business and actors and how difficult it is for everybody to have a decent life. And it's in Austin now. It's been under option for the last 6 years, and they're close to production. They're very close to shooting this thing. And they're talking about a budget of about $2 million, My Monster. And I wrote this 10 years ago, 10, 12 years ago. Now, why am I telling you this story? Okay. Well, partly because I'm very excited, because it's a dream project, and because it came out of this. Watching those actors go crazy wearing all that makeup. But also it's because it's not about an alien, it's not about an actor. It's about what it's like to be a lonely kid and not be appreciated. Because the lead character's name is Savannah, and that's my daughter's name. And trust me, she's 13 right now and she's not appreciated. She'll tell you that right now. You know, and I know how she feels. I knew how I feel as a little kid. And I think anything you do creatively, if it's informed by, it can be as crazy as an actress glued into a spacesuit, an alien makeup suit. It can be as crazy as that. It can be as sane in a way as Breaking Bad was, because there was nothing fantastical about Breaking Bad. You know, so long as there's something about that really pulls you into your heart into it, then it'll be real for other people somewhere down the line, won't it? And all the stuff you're watching, you know, all of the stuff you're watching is like this. You know how Breaking Bad came about? Vince Gilligan was talking to a friend of his one day, and Vince Gilligan at that time had been writing movies. And he had done Hancock. He had just finished writing Hancock, which he thought was a terrible movie. He had written 19 or 20 drafts on that thing. He'd spent like a year and a half writing it. He was very disappointed with the final film. And he was talking to a friend of his and says, I think I'm going to quit the business. I don't think I can do this anymore. It breaks my heart to pour everything I care into something like this. And it turns out so bad. And his friend said, well, maybe we should just go get a Winnebago, take it out into the desert and make meth. He was kidding. His friend was kidding, of course. And then he thought about that over the weekend. Why would anyone do that? What kind of person makes meth? How desperate could they be? How could I relate? Of course he could relate to the guy because he was feeling desperate. He was feeling at a loss. He was feeling like his life was over. And then he came up with Walter White. Perfect name, milquetoast name, Walter White. You cannot get a more milquetoast name. And he called his friend up by Monday and says, I want to work with this. Do you mind? And his friend said, it was a joke. I know, but I think I can work with this. Well, the rest is history. His friend, by the way, was an executive producer on the show. He did not betray his friend. His friend was involved in the show. Whenever they did those interviews, he named his friend. And his friend to this day says, I was just kidding. You know? But he could connect to those ideas. He could connect to that feeling. I'm a firm believer. I'll say this. Okay. I'll say this. My weakest part of being a writing teacher, my greatest weakness as a writing teacher, is I love writing so much. I couldn't stop. I moved to Houston, which is to creativity the way the Alamo was to peace, right? And you know, terrible place to be creative. And I had the best time of my life because no one was messing with me. I could write whatever I wanted. I wrote My Monster. I wrote half dozen other screenplays. I ended up optioning or winning awards of every single one of them. It's a great, wonderful place for me creatively. I couldn't stop writing, even though I didn't even have an agent at the time. And it all turned out very well. The point was I had to keep writing. If you're hooked on anything like this, any creative endeavor like this, and you want to keep doing it, please don't listen to anyone. My wife, whenever I had finished a script at that time, she wanted me to sell insurance. Luckily, I didn't do it. And every time I finished the script, she would say, "Is this the last one?" Like I had a drunken binge, or I had an affair. Is this the last one? You know, if it's something you want to do, and again, a lot of my students hate writing, so of course, I know I can't infect them with my joy of it. All I can tell them is, you write whatever you want in my class. I had one student that insisted on writing A Star is Born only with a porn star. A young woman goes to LA to be a porn star. I won't tell you where the story went because it was really awful. Terrible things happen to porn stars in the story. You know. But I encouraged him, hey, if that's what you want to write, you write it. You're free in my class to write whatever you like. And I think that goes for any creative endeavor, whether it's, there are artists here, I would assume painters. I would assume there's people that like music. I assume there are people here that want to write about, write about UFOs or photograph UFOs, or whatever brings you here. Pursue it with 100%. Pour all your heart into it. Why not? Why not do what you want to do? If you want to make a living, you can always do that on the side. Any questions? I guess we're out of time. Any questions? It's dangerous, it's prevalent, thank God it's happened. You're talking where you go online and you try to find money to make projects? Yeah.
You talked about how your students have a hard time writing, or they can't write well. Yet you also talked about the need to be emotionally invested in your writing.
Yeah.
Do you find that that's the connection with their writing, is that they can't emotionally invest, or that they're too shielded to express themselves really in the writing?
I have students who write English as a second language. I don't correct their grammar. I don't care about that. Because that's a whole other thing. It's exactly what you're saying. The main reason they have trouble writing is because they don't want to express themselves. They don't want to expose themselves. They don't want to put themselves into their work.
So how do you get beyond that?
I share crazy stories like this. I tell them, look, it didn't hurt me any. What's the worst going to happen? I tell them, if you're afraid of writing, I guess I can wrap up with this. We have time for one more question? Okay, after this, one more question. My dad drove an ambulance to Guadalcanal with half-naked, starving Japanese trying to snipe him through his windshield with a Naboo rifle. And he always got behind the wheel of that deuce and a half. And I said, look, that's fear. You want to think about how scary it is to write? Think about my dad driving an ambulance, people trying to kill him. That's fear. Being afraid, and I knew professional people who were afraid to write original material. My ex-partner was afraid to write original material and expose himself. That fear I don't understand. No one's going to hurt you. Unless you committed a crime and you're confessing to it in some fashion. No, you can put whatever you want in your work. There's nothing to be afraid of. That helps them a lot. One more question? Yes?
Tell us a little bit about Gene Roddenberry.
Oh, good question. Gene Roddenberry, yeah. He was, at that time, he was pretty pickled. Honestly, he'd been drinking pretty heavily for a long time, and he was in pretty bad shape. That's what everybody said. He was no trouble. The truth of the matter is, when he did the original show, everyone loved him except the people who worked with him. He was very difficult to work with in the early years in Star Trek Next Generation and back to the old show, because he had a lot of trouble structuring a story. He had great ideas, but he had a lot of trouble structuring a piece, which is a very difficult thing to do. By the time he started doing Next Gen, well, before that, remember in the 70s, they did a series that went nowhere, and they developed 12 scripts, and then they never produced the show. He only wanted to do one story, and it's the story that's in the first movie. And unfortunately, it's the story in the 5th movie, too, the one that William Shatner did, which is The Enterprise Meets God. That was the only story he wanted to do for the last 20 years of his life. And number one, you can't shoot God properly. What does he look like? He has a beard. He's got high heels. Well, what does this mean? And where does it go? And one way or another, it was very difficult to do. It's a big ship. Where does the ship came from? The funniest thing about the first Star Trek movie that had everyone in stitches, including us, was these super amazing, powerful race of beings could build a whole ship around the Voyager thing, right? But they couldn't rub the dirt off of the little nameplate to see that the whole word was Voyager and not V'ger. So they called it V'ger, even though, you know, they didn't have thumbs. They couldn't rub off the dirt and see there was Voyager. I mean, come on, it's ridiculous. But he was very kind and very decent by this time. He signed over the show completely to Rick Berman. Rick Berman did an amazing job. He was a difficult human being, but did an amazing job. Michael, whatever, the supervising producers, they did a great job. They were difficult to work with because the show was so demanding. But he signed over the show to them at that point. And I got my picture taken with him on the set there. I was thrilled, I can't tell you, because he's a guy, look, he did an amazing thing. He really did. He did an amazing thing creating that show. And we all respected him for it, and we respected the fact that it was still going strong. It still is. One more question. Yes?
How were people affected with the thoughts of the show, with the affected psychologically, like other theories and other different advanced technologies, with the actors themselves, like movie stuff, with the portrayal of the scenes where...
That's a good question. No, the actors, because of Patrick Stewart, it was unusual in the sense that the actors were happy. Outside wearing the makeup, they were happy. All of them. Maria Sirtis wasn't happy because there'd be entire episodes where she wouldn't have a line, she'd just stand there looking like a fool. Because we found out very quickly that we couldn't use her very much because if she could read the aliens' minds, the story would be over. So we always had to like get her out of the picture somehow. She was too powerful. But the actors are happy because Patrick Stewart had been a starving actor in England for years. In fact, in 1971, when I was over there going to school, I saw him in Coriolanus and in Southern Night Stream, and he wouldn't recognize him in the roles. He was making $100 a week, and he was thrilled just to get enough money to put food on his table. So when we brought him over here, and we're paying him $50,000 an episode, he was thrilled, and he was so thrilled, he was such a gentleman that it filtered down through the whole cast. No one acted up. No one was giving anyone trouble. You do a show like Starsky and Hutch, and you have two lunatics like that. David Soul that would go home and beat his wife after he beat the crew all week. Paul Michael Glaser that tried to punch out the directors. The actor, everyone was miserable. But in this case, in Star Trek, the actors were very happy and very decent and well behaved, and I think they were enjoying themselves. The biggest problem in Space Precinct was Ken Shackelford was so unhappy because the show was so badly run, he started drinking. You know, and he had a divorce, and then he had tax problems. I wouldn't wish that on anybody. But he didn't act badly, he just had a rough time. No, because they're professionals. And you know, it's always just a cardboard set, really, basically, with a crew behind it. They always know where they're at. Very occasionally an actor will forget where they're at, usually when they're doing love scenes. Then an actor might forget where they're at, and they suddenly look up and there's a crew. That gets embarrassing. Other than that, they mostly pretty much... how many of you are interested, real quick, how many of you are interested in being actors? Oh, same people, all of you. The hardest thing about being an actor is to do it the same way over and over again, from every take and from every angle. Most people can't do that. They start to forget their lines, they start to improv, they get bored, they get tired. A professional actor can stay there all day shooting that same scene over and over again from angle after angle after angle. Keep the same emotional intensity, the same intellectual pursuit over and over again from different angles. And it always looks the same, so it cuts together. That's how professional actors work. They're not in the scene in the way you think they are. They're like machines. But they're so good you don't notice. Okay.
Thank you very much, David. We appreciate it. Actually, we didn't get to the part of David's career that I was really looking forward to, such as Buck Rogers in the 25th Century, Twilight Zone. There's a lot more that he could talk about, but unfortunately we've run out of time. We're going to take a 10-minute break, and then one of the best movies that's ever been done about UFOs, Roswell, will be shown right in here in about 10 minutes.